Beneath the roaring blue, beyond the crush of light and the reach of human arrogance, lies a silence older than time itself. 7 miles down, where pressure bends steel like paper, a graveyard sleeps. The Mariana Trench. A world not of darkness, but of quiet resistance. Here, the forgotten relics of humankind drift in eternal stillness. Shipwrecks, research vessels, even remnants of machines once sent to pierce the unknown. They rest where no current stirs, where light has never breathed, where time itself folds in on its own echo. This is not just a story about what sank. It's about what stayed behind. A memory suspended in the deepest wound of the ocean. Welcome to the unseen. Welcome to the Mariana Abyss. If this journey into the uncharted moves something within you, stay with us. Subscribe, share, and descend with us into the dark where even ghosts hold their breath. The ocean begins not with water, but with mystery. From the first shimmer of the surface light to the black heart of its abyss, it is a story of descent, a slow surrender to something far greater than human comprehension. At first there is color. The blue stretches endlessly, gentle and alive. Waves breathe against the hulls of ships. Sunlight flickers, dances, vanishes. The air hums with salt and wind, the sounds of a world still belonging to us. But as we sink, meter by meter, the familiar begins to fade. The blue darkens into navy, then indigo, then a shade beyond language. Pressure builds, invisible and relentless. Every 10 meters below, it doubles its weight. Every second, the body feels the ocean pressing closer, whispering that it does not forgive intrusion. The water grows heavy, the light flees, and soon there is nothing left to orient the mind. No up, no down. Only the slow pulse of descent and the sound of your own breath echoing through the capsule walls. Down here, sound travels differently. It bends, warps, and stretches like memory. A single drop against the hull can sound like a hammer. The creak of metal becomes a living thing. Explorers describe it as a voice, a deep, hollow resonance, as though the sea itself is speaking in frequencies humans were never meant to hear. The descent into the Mariana Trench is not fast. It's a fall measured in patience and fear. Even the most advanced submersibles move slowly, cautious not to awaken the invisible hand that crushes all it holds. Hours pass. The surface is gone, not above, not behind, simply erased. At 1,000 meters, sunlight is a rumor. At 3,000, the cold begins to bite through titanium. At 6,000, where few have ever seen, the ocean becomes something else entirely. A realm without light, without sound, without mercy. This is the Hadal zone. Named after Hades, the unseen world of the dead. No human body could survive here without its metal cocoon. The pressure is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level. A single breach, a pinhole, could turn steel into vapor. Yet, even in this crushing void, the world is alive. The walls of the trench are not smooth but jagged, scarred by eons of tectonic rage. Each ridge tells the story of Earth's convulsions, continents colliding, plates diving beneath one another, the planet folding itself inward. The Mariana Trench is not a wound of the ocean. It is a scar of the Earth itself. The instruments hum. The lights flicker across a barren slope that vanishes into darkness. The cameras turn, not to find beauty, but to seek proof that such darkness can exist. And then, through the murk, particles drift like snow. Marine snow, the slow, eternal rain of organic matter from worlds above. Every flake a story. The death of a fish, the fall of a leaf, the last breath of plankton. It drifts endlessly, gently, toward the bottom of the world. Scientists once called this zone lifeless. Too deep, too cold, too crushing for survival. But when they finally reached it, they found motion. They found resilience. Creatures that defy imagination. Transparent, gelatinous, shaped like glass, living without sunlight, without heat, without comfort. They feed on the snow that never stops falling. They move slowly, conserving energy, as if aware that time flows differently here. One explorer described it like this: "It's as if the world above never existed. Down there, you are not visiting another world. You are witnessing what the world was before life. Learn to breathe air. The deeper the descent, the heavier the silence becomes. It's not the absence of sound, but the presence of pressure. A silence that has weight, that presses on the heart and demands humility. No birds, no waves, no wind. Only the quiet heartbeat of the planet itself." At nearly 11,000 meters below, the trench floor stretches before the submersible like an alien plane. Silk glows faintly in the artificial light. The cameras record, the instruments blink, but the explorers inside know the truth. Technology may reach this place, but understanding never will. And in that realization lies something profound, that maybe the ocean is not meant to be conquered. Maybe it exists to remind us that mystery still matters. Because even here, in the silence beneath pressure, there are stories waiting, fragments of our world that have fallen into the dark and refuse to die. In the black stillness, time begins to lose its shape. The digital clock on the control panel blinks in silence, but the seconds feel longer here, stretched, diluted, as if gravity itself is uncertain of its duty. Each movement, each hum of machinery, feels too loud, too alive in a world built for stillness. Inside the submersible, the explorers sit in a quiet reverence. Their eyes trace the monitors, their breath fogs the glass. Outside, the world has narrowed to a single beam of light slicing through the dark, a fragile ribbon between life and nothingness. Beyond that beam, there is only the void. Pressure surrounds them, pressing inward from all directions. At this depth, it's not just a physical force. It's psychological. The mind begins to understand its insignificance. To exist here is to be reminded that Earth is not ours. We merely inhabit its surface. Down here, the planet reclaims itself. The pilot steadies his hands. The joystick trembles under subtle resistance, the slow drift of unseen currents. The trench walls loom, ancient and sharp. They seem carved by time itself, but not shaped by chance. Patterns emerge in the rock, long vertical scars, mineral veins glinting like faint veins of light. Each tells of a billion-year-old struggle between land and sea, fire and silence. When the submersible's lights sweep across the slope, the particles of marine snow shimmer like constellations. It feels like looking at the night sky, only reversed, not up into the universe, but down into it. And then, out of nowhere, movement. A shape stirs in the darkness, slow, deliberate. Not fish, not current, something larger, gliding without sound. The crew falls still, hearts beating in unison. Cameras turn, focus tight, eyes wide. The creature passes through the light just long enough to be half seen. A pale body, elongated, almost translucent, with eyes that do not reflect, but absorb. It's gone within seconds. A whisper of motion in an infinite sea. What was it? No one knows. Perhaps a deep-sea amphipod magnified by perspective. Perhaps something not yet classified, unknown even to science. In the Mariana Trench, every discovery begins with doubt. The silence returns, heavier now. The pilot exhales slowly. The narrator's voice could almost tremble. At these depths, even shadows feel alive. As the sub continues, sensors flicker with minor readings, faint thermal traces, biochemical signatures that shouldn't exist. Somewhere along the trench wall, hydrothermal vents release clouds of minerals into the cold. Superheated water meets the freezing deep, creating ghostly plumes that drift like smoke in slow motion. Here, where no sunlight reaches, heat still rises, proof that even in the planet's darkest corners, fire and life endure. The lights reveal strange towers, chimneys of mineral deposits built by bacteria, life clinging to the impossible. Small colonies of amphipods crawl along the surfaces, feeding on microscopic life invisible to the naked eye. Every organism here is a contradiction, delicate yet indestructible, frail yet infinite. The narrator's voice softens. Perhaps that's the secret of the deep, not survival, but persistence. For millions of years, this place has existed without witness. Mountains have risen and fallen above it. Continents have shifted. Civilizations have bloomed and vanished. And still, this trench has remained untouched, unobserved, unmoved. The ocean does not care for the stories of men. It keeps its own. Far below, the submersible reaches a narrow ledge, a plateau of sediment that appears almost level. The light pans across the seafloor. A cloud of disturbed silt rises, curling like smoke in zero gravity. And then, something unexpected. Metal. A small, fractured object half buried in the silt. It glints faintly under the light. The pilot tilts the sub closer, careful not to disturb the current. The robotic arm extends, brushes away the sediment, revealing a fragment of what seems to be an alloy plate, a man-made material. A piece of something that does not belong here. Etched along one edge are corroded markings, numbers, or perhaps letters, too eroded to read. The crew stares. They exchange glances through headsets, their silence louder than words. Down here, any trace of humanity feels like an echo from another world. How long has it been here? How did it fall? Was it part of an expedition, or something lost, swallowed decades ago by the deep? The arm retracts. The cameras record. The object remains half exposed in the mud, like a relic of a forgotten age. And as they move on, the submersible's lights fade from it, leaving it once again in darkness, undisturbed, as if it were never found. Above, thousands of meters away, the ocean waves crash against distant shores. People walk beaches unaware that beneath their feet lies an entire graveyard of dreams and machines. But for those few inside the capsule, the truth has changed. They've seen the threshold, the space between human reach and nature's refusal. And in that moment, one thought lingers. The deeper we go, the smaller we become. The sub drifts onward, swallowed by the dark. Each meter gained is a quiet defiance against the laws of nature. The hull groans faintly, whispering warnings in metal tongues. Outside, the world is a cathedral of nothingness. No sound, no light, no pulse of time. Only the hum of machines and the heartbeat of those inside, steady but uncertain, like the rhythm of trespassers in sacred ground. They descend further still, guided by faith in their instruments and the fragile thread of technology that keeps them tethered to life. Somewhere far above, the surface has become a myth, a memory they can no longer picture clearly. The weight of 11,000 meters of water presses upon them like the memory of every ocean that ever existed. The trench floor rises ahead, uneven, scarred, ancient. In the glow of their lights, the silt shimmers like powdered silver. It is a land without wind, untouched for eons. The cameras rotate, searching for motion, for life, for proof that this desolate kingdom is more than emptiness. But the deeper they look, the more they feel watched, not by eyes, but by presence. It's as though the darkness itself is aware of them, assessing, measuring, waiting. The human mind is not built for such silence. In this place, imagination grows teeth. Every shadow becomes a possibility. Every flicker a thought too strange to name. Then, a sound. A faint metallic click from somewhere beyond the submersible. Not a malfunction, not internal. Something external. It repeats, irregular, echoing through the abyss like the tapping of an unseen hand. The crew freezes. The lights sweep the trench, but nothing moves. Only sediment swirls where the beams pass. Yet the sound persists, then fades, swallowed by pressure and distance. The lead explorer's voice breaks the silence, barely above a whisper, recorded only by the cockpit's mic. It's as if the deep answers us. No one replies. There is nothing to say. Minutes pass. The hum of the instruments returns as the only comfort. They continue the survey, tracing the trench floor with mechanical precision. The robotic arm extends again, gathering samples of sediment and rock. The texture is fine, almost soft, ancient dust of the world's first ocean beds. Within it lie microscopic fossils, remnants of organisms that lived millions of years before humans existed. To touch this silt is to hold prehistory, to hold time itself reduced to ash. Through the viewport, something glimmers faintly in the distance. The pilot adjusts course, steering toward it. The lights reveal another metallic fragment, larger this time, half sunken in the trench wall. Its surface is smooth, curved, reflective, even under this dim light. When they move closer, the realization hits. It's not just a fragment. It's part a hull. A man-made structure, once whole, now reduced to twisted geometry. The pressure has folded it in on itself, compressing its frame into an impossible shape. Yet parts of it remain rivets, plating, a shadow of design. No one knows what vessel it once was. Perhaps a research sub that vanished decades ago. Perhaps military. Perhaps something that was never meant to be found. The deep does not discriminate. It takes everything equally. The camera pans slowly across the wreckage, capturing its eerie stillness. Inside, nothing stirs. No movement, no remains, only silence. The metal is draped with a fine layer of sediment, as if the ocean itself tried to bury the memory. Around its edges, pale worms and translucent shrimp drift, feeding on the minerals bleeding from corrosion. Even decay becomes sustenance here. The narrator's tone would soften. In the deepest silence, even death becomes part of life. A sudden realization settles over them, that every piece of metal, every fragment of wreckage, every trace of human ambition found here is a story of both courage and arrogance. We came here seeking knowledge, yet we never asked permission. And the ocean, vast and ancient, has always collected its due. These wrecks are not just lost vessels. They are confessions, etched in steel, offered to the deep in exchange for a glimpse of its truth. As the sub drifts above the broken structure, the lights begin to flicker. A brief pulse, then darkness. Instruments blink in confusion. For a moment, all power seems to falter. The hum fades. The pressure feels closer, heavier, alive. Inside, breaths quicken. Every heartbeat sounds like thunder. Then, just as suddenly, the systems return. Lights steady. Panels glow. Everything appears normal. But for those inside, the silence afterward is heavier than before. Something felt. Aware. The pilot logs the event calmly, masking unease in routine. Yet, when he glances toward the viewport again, the wreck is gone from view, shrouded by darkness and distance, as if the deep had reclaimed it the moment their attention broke. The trench accepts no witnesses. Hours pass in slow descent. The sub's internal lights cast soft reflections on the glass, making faces look ghost-like, explorers of the unseen becoming ghosts themselves. Above them, the world continues, unaware, unfeeling. Below them lies a place untouched since the birth of the planet. Between the two realms floats this fragile capsule of air and fear. Outside, a particle drifts upward, a single flake of marine snow illuminated in the beam. It spirals gently toward the surface, carrying with it the story of everything that has ever fallen. The deeper they travel, the more it feels like falling into a dream that refuses to end. The sub's lights slice through the water like blades, but beyond their reach, the darkness remains untouched, infinite, patient, ancient. Each meter further is a quiet surrender to forces that have never cared for human persistence. The hull trembles under pressure, The sound is not loud, but constant, like a heartbeat that belongs to the ocean itself. The explorers are not visitors here. They are intruders in a world that measures time in millennia, not hours. The trench widens, opening into a vast plain. The floor stretches endlessly, rippled with fine silt that looks almost like smoke frozen in motion. The instruments pick up faint irregularities, shapes that shouldn't exist, patterns too symmetrical to be natural. The pilot steadies the craft, turning slowly as the light sweeps across the terrain. Shadows bloom and vanish. Then, in a moment of stillness, something emerges from the dark. A shape, faint but deliberate, rising from the seafloor like the remnants of a structure. It looks almost architectural. A cluster of metallic fragments arranged in what could be the remains of a frame. A tower once upright, now bowed and broken. No record exists of any structure being built here. It stands alone in the world's deepest shadow, defying explanation. The cameras zoom in. The frame is twisted beyond recognition, its surfaces coated in rust and sediment. But along one beam, faint markings can still be seen. Lines, numbers, perhaps serial codes, nearly erased by corrosion and time. The narrator's voice would slow to a near whisper. Even at the bottom of the world, our fingerprints remain. Around the base of the wreckage, tiny white creatures crawl. Isopods, brittle stars, translucent as glass. They move methodically, feeding on the decay that has become their ecosystem. It is as if life, having been denied light, has chosen to live off the memory of what once was. Every organism here is part of a silent ritual, to endure, to feed, to exist without acknowledgement. Inside the sub, one of the crew members presses a hand against the viewport, not for scientific purpose, but instinct, as if to touch the deep itself, to feel the weight of eternity pressing back. The glass hums faintly under the pressure. Beyond it, the world does not move. It simply is. A soft voice breaks the silence. Do you think we'll ever truly understand this place? The question hangs in the cabin, unanswered. Because to understand the deep is to strip it of what makes it holy. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only respected. The sub circles once around the structure, recording every detail, every angle. Then the pilot adjusts course toward the trench's lowest point, Challenger deep. The sensors flicker as they approach, struggling to measure the pressure. Outside, gravity seems heavier, light thinner, and the silence thicker. When they finally reach the bottom, the world becomes still in a way that feels unnatural. The lights reveal a flat expanse of pale sediment, smooth, endless, untouched. There are no rocks, no formations, no sound, just the illusion of nothingness. The crew stares, their breath shallow, their words quiet. This is the deepest known place on Earth. 10,984 meters beneath the waves. There is no movement, no life visible, no echo. Only the crushing reminder that this is where the ocean ends, and all certainty with it. And yet, something gleams in the distance. A glint, faint but undeniable. The sub edges closer, careful not to disturb the sediment. The light steadies, and there it is, a fragment of glass. Perfectly round, transparent, no larger than a human hand. It looks like part of a viewport, the kind used in deep-sea submersibles. Perhaps from one that never returned. It lies half-buried, resting like an unblinking eye. The narrator's voice lowers, heavy with reverence. Even in the deepest dark, there are remains of our reaching. No one speaks. There is nothing to add. The moment belongs to the deep. Cameras record the artifact, but the crew knows. Once they leave, the ocean will reclaim it, covering it again in silt, sealing it back into secrecy. Down here, discovery and disappearance are the same act. After a few silent minutes, the pilot begins the slow ascent. The engines hum softly, their vibration lost to the density of water. The sub rises, leaving behind a field of silence, the wreckage, the broken window, the fragile memories of what humanity dared to send into the dark. With every meter upward, light returns not as brightness, but as forgiveness. The pressure lessens, the silence fades, but the feeling lingers that somewhere far below, the deep is watching. When they finally breach the surface hours later, the world feels different. The air is loud, the sky impossibly vast. The ocean around them sparkles like a lie, a mask hiding the truth they've just witnessed. They climb from the capsule, faces pale, eyes distant. No one speaks for a long time. Because how do you describe a place where silence itself has form? How do you explain the feeling of being measured by the planet's oldest depth? As the sun begins to set across the Pacific horizon, one of them looks back at the waves and murmurs softly, almost to themselves, "It's still down there, waiting." And somewhere beneath those waves, in the crushing dark, the deep holds its silence close, patient, eternal, unbroken. The sea remembers everything. Every experiment, every invention, every mistake ever sent into its depths, it keeps them all. Machines that once hummed with human ambition now rest in silence, scattered across the seabed like artifacts of forgotten prayers. They were built to conquer the deep, to touch the unreachable, to prove that our species could outwit the weight of the world. But down here, metal breathes differently. Circuits corrode. Bolts surrender. The deep does not care how advanced we've become. It simply waits, and eventually, it takes. The first explorers who dared to send machines into the abyss did not fully understand what they were asking of them. In the 1960s, when technology was still young and fragile, engineers dreamed of crafting vessels that could dive into darkness and return with stories. The Bathyscaphe Trieste was one such dream, a steel sphere lowered into the unknown, wrapped in layers of oil and hope. In 1960, it descended nearly 11 kilometers into the Mariana Trench. Inside, two men, Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard, became the first to see the deepest point on Earth. The window cracked under the pressure. The hole groaned like a dying beast, and still, they stayed long enough to glimpse the silt of Challenger Deep. When they rose again, their silence spoke louder than their words. They had gone as far as humans could go, and the ocean had let them return once. After Trieste came the age of automation. Machines replaced the human body smaller, faster, built to survive where lungs and bones could not. Submersibles like Tycho and Nereus plunged into darkness, carrying cameras and sensors instead of hearts. They recorded images the world had never seen. Alien plains of mud, glowing creatures drifting like spirits, ancient wrecks lying still under mountains of water. For a time, it seemed we were winning our quiet war with the abyss. But the sea has patience. It waits for mistakes. In 2003, Kaiko Japan's pride of deep exploration was lost to the Pacific. A storm snapped its fiber-optic cable, and the machine, worth millions, vanished into the trench it had studied. In 2014, Nereus, one of the most advanced submersibles ever built, imploded under pressure during a dive to the same depth. Sensors recorded a sudden spike in noise, then nothing. It was gone in an instant, crushed, erased. The narrator's tone would deepen. Down there, even genius meets its limit. For every success, the deep takes something back. Some say these losses are part of the cost of discovery. Others whisper that the ocean simply doesn't want us there. And yet, we return again and again. Each new machine is built stronger, smarter, more resistant. Titanium replaces steel. Synthetic fibers replace cables. Artificial intelligence learns to move through terrain no human could map. Still, no matter how advanced they become, every machine eventually falls silent. Time and salt find a way through everything. If you could stand on the seafloor of the Mariana Trench and look around, You would see them fragments of our progress, scattered like the remains of a quiet battlefield. Robot arms frozen mid-motion, lenses still gleaming under silt. Pieces of hulls, once filled with data and light, now serving as shelters for blind shrimp and translucent worms. Nature wastes nothing. Even failure becomes ecosystem. Each wreck tells its own story. Some were lost during storms. Others suffered mechanical failure. A few no one truly knows. The black box records stop mid-transmission, a final heartbeat cut short by silence. These wrecks are more than debris. They are monuments to our obsession with knowing what lies beneath. Humanity cannot bear a mystery unsolved, and the deep ocean vast, unyielding, has become our greatest unanswered question. It is strange to think that these machines were once extensions of us, our eyes, our reach, our curiosity given form. And now, they rest in the cold, silent company of the world's oldest mysteries. A camera designed to capture movement now faces eternity without it. A probe once built to send data now transmits nothing but absence. They have become fossils of ambition. But perhaps that is what the ocean wants to remind us, that discovery always carries debt. That every light we cast into darkness will one day burn out. And that, sometimes, the machines we send into the abyss do not just record history, they become it. The submersible hums above the wreckage, its beam tracing across the twisted metal. Within that glow lies a haunting truth. We've built technology powerful enough to reach the end of the world, but not strong enough to belong there. Somewhere in the distance, a faint ping echoes through the sonar, a single metallic tone. Maybe debris shifting. Maybe something else. The pilot notes it calmly, but the sound lingers long after it fades. It's as if the deep itself is whispering back, reminding them that the machines are never truly gone. They simply wait, in silence, to be remembered. As the lights of the modern submersible drift through the black water, the ocean swallows the beam like ink devouring fire. The pilot watches the monitor's flickers of life, static shadows that move when nothing should. Every meter deeper feels like slipping further from the world above, as if the rules of time and sound dissolve under the weight of the deep. There is no sunrise here, no horizon, no up or down, only pressure and patience. The only sound is the faint hum of the machine's engine, pulsing like a heartbeat that doesn't belong. For a moment, the ocean feels alive, not just full of life, but aware. The way the current curls around the vessel, the way the sand stirs when no motion passes, it's as though the sea is breathing, curious, almost conscious. Humanity built these machines to study it, to decode its language. But sometimes, it feels as though the deep is studying us in return. Every expedition starts the same way, with calculation, optimism, precision. Every descent feels like victory until something goes wrong. The deeper you go, the less control you have. Pressure becomes an invisible enemy, a constant reminder that this realm does not belong to us. A single flaw in a bolt, a flicker in the circuit, a misread command, and the ocean will claim another of our creations. No rescue, no retrieval. Just silence and miles of black water. When Nereus imploded, it happened faster than thought. One instant, data streamed from the abyss. The next, a sharp pulse of static, and then nothing. Engineers later described it clinically: catastrophic structural failure under extreme pressure. But that phrase hides the human truth behind it, the heartbreak of seeing years of work, millions in design, vanish in the blink of an eye. Somewhere, at 10,000 meters below, those fragments now lie like a graveyard of brilliance. And yet, despite every failure, we return. We always return. Because inside the human mind, curiosity is not just a trait, it's a hunger. We need to know what lies beyond the edge of understanding. That hunger built the first ship to cross the Atlantic, the first rocket to pierce the sky, and the first machine to dive into eternal darkness. It's the same hunger that drives today's engineers to craft new explorers, sleek titanium bodies, AI-guided drones, robotic arms delicate enough to pick up a grain of sand, yet strong enough to survive the crushing embrace of the abyss. The new generation of ocean robots move with an eerie grace. They hover above ancient wrecks like ghosts paying respect. Cameras sweep across lost ships, planes, and submersibles, human ambition layered upon human loss. And in that dance of light and shadow, there is something profoundly poetic. Machines built by humans now studying the ruins of other machines built by humans, as if the ocean has turned our technology into an endless loop of reflection. Above, the scientists watch through monitors, faces illuminated by faint blue light. Every image transmitted from below feels like a message from another world. A fragment of coral on a piece of steel. A fish swimming through a shattered control panel. Life reclaiming what we left behind. The ocean is not cruel, it is eternal. It erases our boundaries and rewrites our inventions into its story. Sometimes, in the recordings, strange sounds appear: metallic clicks, low hums, rhythmic pulses. Scientists call them geological or biological anomalies. But the divers who have been there, the ones who've stared into that endless void, tell a different story. They say the ocean talks in ways we don't yet understand. They say that beneath all that pressure, there is something that listens back. The camera pans slowly, revealing a half-buried piece of a submersible hull. Letters still visible on its side faded, but not forgotten. The narrator's voice lowers. These machines were once our hope. Now they are our reflection. A faint vibration moves through the water. The pilot glances at the sonar screen. Another ping. Familiar, rhythmic, measured, almost like an echo from the past. Maybe it's interference. Or maybe it's something calling from the place where our machines have gone to rest. For a brief second, as the lights flicker and the static hums, it feels as if the ocean is whispering, not in anger, not in warning, but in remembrance. Every signal, every failed transmission, every silence, they all merge into a kind of underwater requiem, a hymn of metal and memory. And then, as quickly as it came, the sound fades. The screen steady. The submersible continues its slow drift through the dark, leaving behind the resting ground of its predecessors. Above, the surface waits, oblivious to the quiet conversation happening miles below. In the end, no matter how far we go, every descent is a dialogue with the unknown. Every dive, a reminder that we are temporary visitors in a place that measures time not in years, but in eternities. The submersible drifts into a trench that feels older than memory itself. Its lights carve narrow corridors through the darkness, catching glints of something: metallic edges of twisted steel, a shattered panel, a circular window clouded with silt. The machine pauses, as though in hesitation, like a diver holding breath before entering a sacred place. The sonar hums softly. Each pulse echoes back slower than before, as if the abyss itself has grown thicker, heavier, sentient. Then, a voice crackles faintly through the comms. A human voice, its fragmented broken into pieces by distortion. Copy that depth stable, readjust thrusters, and then silence. The pilot stares at the monitor, frozen. The transmission is from an older frequency, one not used in decades. Impossible. It could be a reflection, a signal bouncing through layers of cold water, or something replaying itself from another time. The team above listens in, static, then another whisper. Hold. Depth. Steady. The timestamp reads from a mission lost long ago. The words belong to voices that never came back. What they're hearing isn't live, it's a ghost of sound, trapped in the folds of the ocean. The Mariana has become an archive of every dream and every disaster humanity ever sent down here. And tonight, it's speaking. The pilot's hand trembles slightly on the control stick. Ahead, the lights illuminate a shape massive, fragmented, half buried in silt. A section of a hull. The letters TRI, just visible before vanishing under a cloud of disturbed sand. The Trieste, too, a modern descendant of the sub that once reached the bottom of the Challenger Deep, officially retired, long dismantled. But here, another piece lies forgotten, or perhaps claimed. The narrator's voice slows, heavy with awe and fear. We thought the ocean forgot, but the deep remembers everything we leave behind. As the submersible moves closer, cameras capture something strange. Coral has grown along the metal in perfect spirals, tracing the outlines of instruments, cables, windows. Nature is redesigning technology, transforming wreckage into art. The contrast is hauntingly beautiful. The man-made and the organic, fused by time and silence. The deep doesn't destroy. It transforms. Every fragment of machine becomes part of its ecosystem. Steel turns to reef, glass to shelter. The Mariana is not a graveyard. It's a womb, a place where endings become beginnings, where even the remnants of human ambition evolve into something alive again. Then, the light flickers. A shadow moves across the screen, slow, massive, unidentifiable. Not a fish. Not a machine. Something beyond shape. The sonar registers a pulse, low and long, vibrating through every panel. It feels less like a sound and more like a presence. Surface control, the pilot whispers. I'm picking up. Static interrupts him. The voice above replies, but it's broken, distant, like someone shouting through a dream. The readings spike. The water outside trembles with invisible energy. For a heartbeat, the camera catches something, just a glimpse. A vast silhouette beyond the light, its surface glinting like shifting glass. Not metal, not skin. Something else. The pilot stares, transfixed, unable to tell if what he's seeing is real or the ocean's illusion. And then it's gone. The silence returns, pressing in from all sides. The pilot steadies his breath. Data logs resume, recording nothing but pressure, coordinates, and pulse readings. Everything looks normal again. Yet in that normality lies the deepest kind of unease, the feeling that the ocean allowed them a glimpse, not of what's down there, but of what waits. Above, in the control room, the team replays the footage. The frame freezes at that single moment, where light met shadow, and something immeasurable looked back. They don't speak for a long time. Finally, one of them mutters, "The deep doesn't give up its secrets. It only loans them." The screen fades to black. The narrator's final line in this part whispers over the darkness. In the quietest place on Earth, even silence has an echo. There is a point in every dive when even the most advanced sensors lose their grip on certainty. The numbers blur. The instruments stutter. And what lies ahead becomes less a matter of science and more of faith. The Mariana Trench was once mapped in cold, digital precision. But the truth is, much of it remains a blank space, a void on the charts. And somewhere beyond those coordinates, explorers have begun to whisper of a place they called the abyssal vault. It began as a rumor, a cluster of signals that refused to behave like anything. Natural, rhythmic, pulsing, intelligent, not seismic activity, not whale song, not static. The patterns were too deliberate. Each frequency rose and fell like breathing. Some said it was the ocean's own heartbeat. Others believed it was the metallic echo of wrecks colliding under pressure. But the older divers, the ones who stared into the dark too long, said something different. They said it was calling. The submersible Abyss Seeker 4 was the first to chase that call. Built with a hull strong enough to withstand 1,200 times the surface pressure, it was humanity's most daring creation, a vessel of glass and titanium, light and silence. Inside, 3 explorers prepared for a descent into the unmapped trench, following coordinates that no sonar dared to illuminate. They knew the risks. Every meter down was a wager against the impossible. Yet, something about the signal, a slow, hypnotic rhythm pulled them deeper. Outside their window, the world faded from cobalt to black. Marine snow drifted like cosmic dust, suspended in eternal twilight. The deeper they went, the more the sound began to change. At first it was distant, like a heartbeat behind a wall. Then it grew closer, steady, patient, aware. Each pulse seemed to sync with the submersible's instruments, disrupting readings, almost guiding them, like a trail left by something that wanted to be found. The narrator's voice deepens, slow and deliberate. We thought the abyss was a place of stillness, but the deeper we listened, the more we realized it was speaking. Then, the cameras caught something extraordinary. The terrain below was not jagged rock or sediment. It was smooth, polished, reflective, like black glass. The sonar painted the image of a vast concave structure, miles across, rising from the trench floor. It wasn't natural. It was too symmetrical, too precise. The abyss seeker hovered, its lights tracing the outline of something circular, immense, and ancient. The pilot murmured, "It looks like a gate," and maybe it was. The submersible circled the structure, scanning its surface. The material was unlike anything known, neither metal nor stone, and yet impervious to pressure. The deeper they explored, the stronger the pulse became, resonating through every sensor, every cable, even their bones. The crew began to feel it not as sound, but as sensation, like a whisper moving through the body, bypassing words entirely. "Surface control, we've reached the coordinates," the pilot reported. His voice trembled slightly. It's not a trench wall. It's something else. Something built. Static filled the comes. Then silence. The team above tried to re-establish contact, but the link was gone. The ocean had folded them into itself. The abyss seeker continued to drift downward, toward the center of the vault. The cameras captured a faint glow, a circular opening, perfectly round, emitting a light so pale it barely existed. It pulsed in sync with that same rhythm, steady and slow. And then, just before the signal vanished completely, the last transmission came through a whisper, barely audible. "It's opening." After that, nothing. No debris. No wreckage. No trace. The mission logs ended mid-transmission. Official reports labeled it instrumental failure due to extreme depth, but unofficially, the data told a different story. The pulse didn't stop when Abyss Seeker 4 disappeared. It continued stronger, clearer, almost as if something beneath the trench had awakened. The narrator's voice lowers to a haunting whisper. "We went searching for the ocean's secrets and found a door." The screen fades to black. For a moment, only silence remains. Then a single faint sound like a heartbeat, echoing through eternity. The ocean holds its breath. Far below the last known coordinates of the Abyss Seeker 4, the world folds into silence. Every trace of light has been swallowed, every signal lost. The trench no longer feels like a place, it feels like a state of being. Endless, suspended, ancient. The submersible's last transmission, its opening, lingers in archives like a question no one dares to finish. Months later, a new expedition was formed. Not by governments or universities, but by a small group of oceanographers and engineers who refused to accept silence as an answer. They called themselves Project Orpheus. Their goal was simple, yet terrifying. Find out what happened to the Abyss Seeker, and trace the source of that rhythmic signal that now pulsed stronger than ever across the Pacific. Their vessel, Erebus 9, wasn't the largest or the fastest, but it carried something no previous mission had: an experimental probe designed not just to record sound, but to speak it back. A machine capable of replying to frequencies, echoing the pulse in perfect synchronization. To not just listen to the abyss, but to talk to it. The dive began under a moonless sky. As the capsule slipped below the waves, the world above dissolved into memory. The first hours were uneventful. The crew monitored readouts, silent but focused. Pressure climbed. Light faded. Temperatures dropped. But as they crossed the 10,000-meter mark, the signal reappeared slow, deep, rhythmic. A single deliberate thump every 30 seconds. The lead researcher, Dr. Vega, leaned toward the console. "Match the interval," she whispered. The probe responded with a mirrored pulse identical in tone and rhythm. The sound vanished. For a long moment, nothing answered. Then, the trench replied, not with one pulse, but three. The crew froze. It was no longer just an echo. It was a reply patterned, intelligent, intentional. Vega's breath hitched. "It's responding," she said softly. "It knows we're here." Outside the hull, the darkness began to change. The cameras picked up faint streaks of luminescence spiraling upward, like veins of light awakening within the water itself. It wasn't biological plankton. Each glow followed the same rhythm as the pulse. Light and sound, working together like an unseen code. The deeper the signal grew, the more it began to resemble language. The narrator's voice deepens. It was no longer the ocean speaking in currents and pressure. It was communication. Then came the impossible. The probe detected a shift of void forming ahead. Sonar scans revealed a perfect sphere, 20 meters wide, with walls smooth and reflective, just like the structure from the Abyss Seeker's last transmission. Only now, the door was open. Inside lay a tunnel of complete blackness, darker than water, darker than space. "Send the drone," Vega ordered. The machine descended into the hollow. Its lights vanished almost instantly, as if the darkness was consuming the photons themselves. But the feed continued. The walls were lined with geometric patterns, sharp, symmetrical, etched into the surface like circuitry. Lines of faint light pulsed along them, connecting in intricate webs, breathing softly like veins. "What are those markings?" one of the engineers whispered. Vega studied the patterns, her voice trembling. "They're not random. They're data." The deeper the drone traveled, the faster the pulses became. The tunnel seemed to recognize their presence, responding to their signal, amplifying it, multiplying it. The readings spiked so violently, the crew thought the system would fail. And then the drone's feed froze on a final frame, a circular chamber filled with objects. At first glance, they looked like stones. But as the image stabilized, the truth became clearer. They were not stones. They were machines. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, shaped like shells or pods, resting silently on the floor. Each one built from the same reflective material, each one faintly humming with internal energy. The crew stared in silence. One of the engineers whispered, "Are those ours?" Vega shook her head slowly. "No, they're older." The pulse quickened. The lights along the walls brightened, moving in a synchronized rhythm. The ocean around them began to vibrate, not violently, but purposefully, like an orchestra tuning itself before the first note. Then the drone's feed cut out. The lights inside the Erebus 9 flickered. Every monitor went black. The rhythmic pulse they had been following suddenly stopped. And in that infinite quiet, another sound emerged, a low hum, distant yet impossibly vast. Not mechanical, not natural. It was something else, something alive. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. Beneath all that silence, something was waiting to be heard. And then, for the briefest moment before power returned, a new signal appeared, clear, deliberate, and unmistakably human. It was the voice of the Abyss Seeker 4 pilot, lost months before, Dr. Vega. The voice said, fractured by static, "Don't open." The message cut off. The ocean returned to silence. But this time, everyone listening knew it was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence before something begins. The hum returns. Faint at first, like a vibration felt more than heard. A deep, resonant breath exhaled by the planet itself. Inside Erebus 9, every console flickers back to life one by one, Lights blooming across the dark cabin, like the awakening of a mechanical heartbeat. But the readings are wrong. The coordinates have shifted. Somehow, the submersible is no longer stationary. The trench walls outside seem to move, slowly folding around them as if the very topography is alive, rearranging itself. Dr. Vega stares at the sonar display. The structure ahead, the vault, has changed. What was once a circular gateway has unfurled, revealing vast, sweeping corridors of perfect geometry descending deeper still. It's not natural erosion. It's architecture. The ocean has been hiding something built with intention. Something waiting. The voice on the recorder, the voice of the Abyss Seeker 4 pilot, still echoes faintly in her headset. Don't open. The warning repeats in her mind, but the scientist in her refuses to retreat. Every instinct screams danger, but curiosity is louder. Humanity has always walked willingly into the unknown, blinded by wonder. And now, at the bottom of the deepest place on Earth, that same wonder demands another step forward. The probe is redeployed. Its light cuts into the darkness, revealing columns that stretch upward into infinity. Each one carved with symbols that seem to shift when viewed too long, shapes that almost resemble constellations, or maybe mathematical equations. But what unsettles Vega most is their rhythm. They pulse in the same pattern as a human heartbeat. The drone hovers above a massive circular platform in the chamber center. From here, the hum grows stronger, not chaotic, but orchestrated, like 1,000 voices whispering in unison beneath the frequency of hearing. The readings show electromagnetic activity far beyond anything natural. The vault isn't just a structure, it's a machine. Is it responding to us? One of the engineers asks, his voice trembling. Vega nods slowly. No, it's recognizing us. The probe's camera pans downward, and there it is. The floor is engraved with a vast relief, a design so intricate it takes a moment to understand. It's not random. It's a map. Not of the ocean, but of the planet itself. Coastlines, tectonic lines, even atmospheric layers etched in luminous relief. And at its center, a spiral, leading downward, far below the crust, beyond anything humanity has ever reached. The hum crescendos. Every panel in Erebus 9 lights up in sync. Sensors spike. Something is coming alive. And then, a flash. The video feed distorts, static blooming across the screen. The probe spins, cameras capturing glimpses, light flaring through the walls, water shimmering like glass, currents reversing direction as though gravity itself has turned inside out. Through the distortion, Vega glimpses something impossible. Movement inside the vault. Shapes, not mechanical, not organic. Fluid silhouettes suspended in the glow, flowing in and out of the walls like thought made visible. They shift form, sometimes human, sometimes unrecognizable, as if mimicking what they observe. One of the engineers whispers, "Are those projections?" But Vega shakes her head. No, they're observing us. For a brief instant, one of the figures turns, its outline aligning with the camera. It's human-shaped, almost perfectly. A face, or the idea of one, stares through the lens. Then, without warning, the image bursts into white. The connection cuts. When vision returns, the vault is dark again. The probe is gone. The hum has stopped. The water outside lies still, impossibly still, as though the entire trench is holding its breath. In the control room, the crew stares at the data logs. Every second of footage is intact, except for one blank interval, exactly 47 seconds long. During that gap, the equipment recorded nothing. No visuals, no sound. But the internal sensors show something impossible. The submersible's oxygen levels increased. Vega's voice is quiet. It gave us back what it took. She doesn't finish the thought. She doesn't need to. The others feel it too. The sense that what they've encountered isn't an artifact, but something alive. patient, aware. Something that has been waiting for them to arrive. The narrator's voice slows, carrying that heavy, breathless awe. The deeper we dig into the past, the more it feels like we're the ones being remembered. As Erebus 9 begins its slow ascent, the vault fades into shadow. Yet, for a fleeting moment, just before the last camera feed cuts to black, a single pulse echoes through the abyss. Not one, not three, but two. A new rhythm, a duet. The ocean, it seems, has learned our language. The ocean has always been a mirror. What we cast into it, it returns in its own language. But now, that language has changed. It started small, unnoticed. A tremor off Guam, a flicker in satellite readings above the western Pacific. At first, scientists thought it was seismic drift, the ocean floor shifting as it always does. But the pattern was too clean, too rhythmic. It wasn't movement, it was a pulse, the same pulse. The one that vanished with Erebus 9. Dr. Vega stood in the control bay of the Oceanic Research Command Center, staring at a wall of monitors streaming data from across the Pacific Rim. Every system, from deep-sea buoys to orbital sensors, was picking up identical frequencies. The signal had multiplied, spreading outward like a tide of invisible sound. "This can't be local," an analyst whispered. "It's global." Across the coasts of Japan, Chile, the Philippines, the water began to hum. Not violently, not like an earthquake. It was deeper, resonant, as though the sea itself was remembering something. Fishermen described their compasses spinning in slow circles. Cargo ships lost orientation, drifting despite calm seas. Underwater microphones recorded vibrations that mimicked whale song, except they weren't biological. Each one carried mathematical precision. The narrator's voice descends into a low, deliberate cadence. For the first time in human history, the ocean wasn't reacting. It was responding. At first, the phenomenon was dismissed as a data anomaly. But as the hours turned into days, strange patterns began to appear. Coral reefs in the South Pacific, long thought dead, began to glow faintly at night. Not bioluminescence, but something electrical. Metallic structures near wreck sites hummed faintly in synchrony. Even satellites detected electromagnetic signatures rising from beneath the surface, climbing into the ionosphere. Somewhere in all that noise, humanity realized the unthinkable. The vault hadn't just awakened beneath the Mariana. It had connected. Dr. Vega knew it. She had felt it in the trench. That moment when the vault's hum aligned with her heartbeat. The ocean wasn't broadcasting a signal. It was rewriting its own rhythm, syncing with the planet itself. And now, everything that carried water, rivers, clouds, even blood, resonated faintly with that same frequency. The press called it the blue shift. To scientists, it was data. To sailors, it was a haunting. To Vega, it was communication. One night, as she reviewed the recordings from Erebus 9, she noticed something buried deep within the final audio stream, a pattern in the static, one that shouldn't exist. When slowed down, the waveform revealed structure. Pulse, 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 pause. Morse code. And translated, it spelled one word. Listen. The air in the lab felt heavier, as if the message wasn't meant for ears, but for everything alive that contained water. Vega looked out through the glass toward the bay beyond. The sea was calm, motionless, but she could feel the vibration in her bones. That night, off the coast, the fishermen saw something no satellite could explain. Lights, vast and slow-moving, traveling beneath the waves in perfect formation, like constellations gliding through the dark. Some swore they saw symbols traced in the water, circular patterns rippling across the surface. Others said they heard whispers carried by the wind, too low to be words, too rhythmic to be chants. In ports and cities across the Pacific, people began waking from the same dream, an image of standing underwater, surrounded by light, hearing a sound that felt like a memory they couldn't quite recall. Governments called it hysteria. But Vega knew better. The ocean wasn't invading our world. It was merging with it. The narrator's voice slows to a haunting whisper. When we opened the vault, we thought we were the first to listen. But perhaps the sea had been waiting for us to remember how, in the following days, the currents shifted. Deep ocean flows that had remained constant for centuries reversed course. Satellites tracked unseen energy patterns looping through the Pacific, forming perfect spirals that matched the vault's carvings. Every instrument pointed to the same truth. The planet was changing, quietly, deliberately. And yet, beneath the chaos of readings and data, there was stillness, an order to it all. It was no longer a scientific mystery. It was something older, something sentient, something awakening. The narrator pauses. The screen fades to black. And beneath the silence, one sound rises again. Soft, familiar, human. The whisper from the Abyss Seeker IV. It's opening. At first, it was subtle. A rhythm beneath the noise of ordinary life. Waves began to move in ways no wind could explain, tracing perfect geometric patterns across the open sea. Migrating whales altered their courses, swimming toward the Pacific as though called home by an ancient summons. Even birds that crossed the ocean seemed to move in synchronized arcs, drawn by invisible forces. News networks struggled to make sense of it. Oceanic anomaly, they called it. A phrase that sounded clinical enough to bury the fear behind numbers and graphs. But for the people who lived along the coasts, it wasn't just anomaly. It was presence. Children in island villages began waking up at night saying they heard the ocean breathing. Divers swore they saw shapes moving beneath them, enormous, deliberate, too fluid to be machines. On beaches across the Philippines and Indonesia, phosphorescent foam washed ashore at dawn, glowing faintly blue before fading to white. Scientists collected it for testing, but every sample dissolved the moment it was removed from seawater, as if it refused to exist outside the ocean's body. Dr. Vega sat in silence inside her lab, watching the footage from deep-sea cameras positioned near the Mariana site. The light from the vault, that pulsating blue glow, now extended for miles along the trench walls. It moved like veins, pulsing with life. The sensors reported temperature fluctuations far beyond anything natural, but the readings repeated with mechanical precision. It wasn't random. It was a heartbeat. And yet there was no organism, no machine large enough to explain it. It was as though the ocean itself had become aware of its observer. Vega's hands trembled as she rewound the footage frame by frame. For just an instant, between two pulses, she saw something that shouldn't have been there. An outline. Human. Translucent. Floating upright in the dark, facing the camera. She froze the frame, zoomed in. But when the next pulse of light came, the figure was gone. A voice in the control room broke her trance. Dr. Vega. You need to see this. He turned another monitor toward her, a satellite image of the Pacific. The currents, when mapped by thermal imaging, formed a shape too exact to be coincidence. A spiral, identical to the symbol carved into the vault, but this one wasn't static. It was growing. The narrator's voice, slow and reflective, cuts through the hum of data and machinery. We thought the sea was a thing to be measured. We forgot it was also a thing that remembers. Over the next few days, the world began to listen, truly listen, for the first time. Oceanographers, linguists, even cryptologists gathered to decode the repeating frequencies rising from the deep. Some believed it was a message. Others feared it was an awakening beyond comprehension. But Vega began to hear something else within the data. A voice. Not words exactly, but intention. The frequencies carried mathematical sequences that resembled musical intervals, resonating with the golden ratios found in living organisms. It was as if the ocean was tuning the planet adjusting everything toward a single harmonic point. That's when the first human effects began. People near coastlines reported dreams, vivid, shared, impossible dreams of walking through corridors of light under endless water. Those who ventured to record their experiences drew identical symbols, spirals, circles, and what looked like doorways. Some woke up humming melodies they didn't remember learning. Yet when recorded and analyzed, those melodies mirrored the same frequency patterns found in the vault's pulses. Governments issued advisories. Some called it mass suggestion. Others whispered of something far more profound, a biological synchronization between humanity and the ocean itself. And then, one morning, every seismograph in the Pacific lit up at once. No quake, no eruption, just motion. A rolling wave of sound, low and vast, circling the earth 3 times before fading into silence. It left the world trembling, not from destruction, but from awe. Vega watched the data streaming across her screen, her reflection flickering in the blue light. "It's not warning us," she whispered. "It's waking us." Outside, the ocean stretched endlessly into the dark horizon, and for the first time in human history, it didn't seem empty. It seemed alive, aware, listening. The narrator's voice fades almost to silence, and in that quiet realization, humanity began to understand. We were never the ocean's explorers. We were its memory, returning to itself. The final sound is soft, a deep, echoing pulse, as though the world itself had taken a breath. Days turned into weeks, and the world began to bend beneath the ocean's new rhythm. It started with the tides, no longer predictable, no longer bound by the moon. They moved with strange symmetry, rising and falling in intervals that defied gravitational law. Meteorologists called it resonant oscillation. Sailors called it the breathing of the deep. Coastal cities began to adapt. At night, the sea glowed faintly blue, tracing the shorelines with soft luminescence. It wasn't chemical, nor bioluminescent. It was energy, alive and pulsing in time with the vault's heartbeat. The air itself shimmered faintly when the waves rolled in, and radios caught fragments of sound, whispers of frequencies that couldn't belong to machines. Dr. Vega's lab had become a sanctuary for chaos. Every monitor screamed data, frequencies, waves, electromagnetic bursts, each one building upon the last, as though the planet itself was composing something vast and deliberate. But the more Vega studied, the more she began to sense something beneath the science. The readings weren't random, nor purely physical. They were alive. Every pulse from the trench came in fractal precision, aligning with the biological rhythms of life, heartbeats, neural signals, even circadian cycles. The ocean wasn't merely changing, it was aligning. Humanity, unknowingly, was synchronizing with it. Vega stood before the massive holographic model of the Pacific, watching the spiral pattern grow larger each day. When plotted across months, it resembled a bloom, like a flower unfurling, petal by petal, across the planet's surface. "This isn't expansion," she murmured. "It's emergence." Her assistant turned toward her, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. "Emergence of what?" Vega hesitated before answering, her voice low. "Consciousness." Outside the lab, the signs were undeniable. Migratory species that had vanished decades ago returned in great numbers. Coral reefs, once bleached and dead, began to regenerate with impossible speed, their colors richer than ever recorded. Even atmospheric sensors picked up increased oxygen production along coastal regions. The Earth itself seemed to be healing, guided by a silent, unseen intelligence. Yet for all its beauty, there was fear. Off the coast of California, entire pods of whales gathered in a single formation, hundreds moving as one, their songs perfectly synchronized. In the Arctic, ice shelves began to fracture not from melting, but from vibration, as if the resonance from the ocean's core was reaching every molecule of water on Earth. Governments grew desperate. Satellite images of the Mariana Trench showed strange distortions, optical anomalies that defied explanation. Some frames appeared to bend light itself, curving reality like glass under pressure. The vault's glow could now be seen from space, a faint pulse rising from the darkest point on the planet. Vega received a message marked Top Priority, Global Oceanic Command. It contained a single instruction: return to the trench. The world was unraveling in beauty and terror, and she knew there was no stopping it. The vault was no longer a secret beneath the sea. It had become the ocean's voice, calling out across the planet. As Vega prepared for the descent aboard the Abyss Seeker V, she paused by the observation window. The ocean stretched before her like a living creature, breathing beneath the clouds. The water's surface trembled with a faint shimmer, not from light, but from something deeper. She placed her hand on the glass, feeling the hum vibrate through her skin. For the first time, it felt less like sound, and more like a heartbeat syncing with her own. The narrator's voice deepens into a quiet, reverent tone. Perhaps this was never an awakening at all. Perhaps the ocean was never asleep. At midnight, Abyss Seeker V began its slow descent. The vessel's lights pierced the blackness, cutting through the shifting columns of water that glowed with faint alien blue. As they passed 6,000 meters, the hum intensified, vibrating through metal and bone alike. Vega stared into the abyss below, where the light no longer obeyed physics. It bent, curved, twisted into spirals that resembled eyes, galaxies, or perhaps gates. Dr. Vega, the pilot whispered, "We're detecting something new beneath the vault. A void." Her heart quickened. A void? "Negative density," the pilot said. "Like something is folding space inward." The hum grew louder. The vessel's walls trembled. Vega gripped the console, whispering almost to herself, "It's not a void. It's an entrance." The final pulse came then, deep and resonant, shaking the vessel from bow to stern. And through the viewport, Vega saw it, the vault's light expanding, not outward, but through them, into them. Her voice broke into a whisper, half terror, half awe. "It's calling us home." The narrator's tone fades to a near whisper, and in that moment, humanity's last illusion of separation dissolved. The ocean had spoken. The world had listened. Now, it was time to return. A final sound echoes through the dark, the deep, rhythmic pulse of the abyss, slow and steady, like the heart of the world itself. The descent was slower this time, not because the Abyss Seeker V couldn't go faster, but because speed no longer mattered. Every meter downward felt like a crossing, a passage not just into depth, but into something older than the human mind could name. Outside the viewport, the blackness was no longer empty. It shimmered with threads of blue light, winding through the water like veins of a living being. Dr. Vega watched in silence, her reflection dissolving in the glass, replaced by the pulsing glow that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. The hum was no longer an external sound. It was internal, vibrating through her chest, syncing with her heartbeat. Every pulse whispered a wordless invitation. The narrator's voice carries through the darkness. "We spent centuries mapping the ocean, believing it to be a world apart. But what if the sea was never a frontier? What if it was the origin, and we, the forgotten current returning to it?" At 10,000 meters, the instruments began to fail, not from pressure, but interference. Magnetic readings inverted, radiation levels fluctuated, and time itself seemed to distort. The onboard clock stuttered, jumping forward and backward in flickering bursts. Vega's voice, calm but trembling, echoed through the intercom. "Record everything, even the silence." Beyond the glass, the light grew stronger. Not chaotic, not random, structured. Patterns formed in the water, like architecture made of luminescence. Towers of liquid geometry spiraled upward, suspended in nothing. The deeper they descended, the more it looked like a city, not built, but grown. The vault was no longer just a chamber. It was vast, cathedral-like, and alive. Then, through the glowing haze, they saw it, the center. A sphere, suspended in the abyss, rotating slowly, its surface rippling with intricate patterns that changed with every pulse. Around it, fragments of wrecks, ships, submarines, planes, hung in perfect stillness, as if gravity itself had surrendered. Vega whispered, "The sea doesn't destroy. It keeps." The narrator breathes the words like revelation. Every vessel lost, every life taken by the deep, not vanished, but preserved within the ocean's memory. They approached the sphere. The hum became unbearable now, not in volume, but in weight, pressing against their thoughts, resonating through their bones. Vega closed her eyes, and in the darkness, she saw not light, but images. Memories not her own. Ancient oceans, continents shifting, creatures rising and vanishing. The earth dreaming itself into being. The pilot's voice broke the trance. "We're losing systems. Pressure's stable, but the instruments are reading negative time flow." "Negative?" Vega whispered. "As if we're moving backward," he finished. Outside, the currents reversed direction. The glowing strands coiled inward toward the sphere, wrapping around it like arms of light. And for a moment, everything stopped. Motion, vibration, even sound. The ocean became perfectly still. Then, from the sphere, a ripple of light expanded outward, passing through the vessel, through the crew, through the ocean itself. It didn't feel like energy. It felt like recognition. In that instant, Vega understood. The vault wasn't a creation. It was a memory, a consciousness stored in the ocean's depths, waiting for the world to become quiet enough to hear it again. Humanity had mistaken it for mystery, for danger, but it was neither. It was origin. Her voice, breaking with awe, filled the cabin. "It's not calling us back to it. It's showing us. We never left." The narrator's tone softens into near reverence. In the deepest place on earth, where light should die, humanity discovered that memory has no depth, only return. Outside, the abyss shimmered. The fragments of lost vessels began to move, slowly, gracefully, as if guided by the current itself. They weren't wrecks. They were vessels of memory, drawn together by the same rhythm that now pulsed in every living thing. The ocean had never been separate. It was the planet's heart and the vault, its mind. Vega reached for the controls, tears drifting weightlessly in the low gravity. "If it remembers us," she whispered, "then maybe it forgives us too." The hum deepened one final time into something vast and endless, not a sound, but a voice carried by the water itself, a chorus of everything that have ever lived, murmuring in perfect unison. And then, silence. The narrator's final words for the part drift like an echo through black water. In silence, the sea remembers. In stillness, it returns. The silence that followed felt heavier than sound. It pressed against the hull of the Abyss Seeker V, filling every breath with an aching stillness. The crew barely moved. In that quiet, time no longer felt linear. It hung around them like suspended dust. The sphere ahead glowed softly, its surface now translucent, rippling like liquid glass. Dr. Vega's voice broke the silence, low and distant. "We're inside its field. The vault isn't resisting us. It's waiting." The pilot's trembling hands hovered over the controls. Depth unknown, gravity flux stable, oxygen normal. Everything says we shouldn't be alive. Vega's gaze remained fixed on the sphere. Maybe alive isn't what it used to be. The narrator's tone falls into a hushed reverence. When knowledge reaches its end, what remains is experience. And beyond experience, memory. The lights of the ship flickered. For a breath, the crew's reflections vanished from the glass, replaced by others. Faces. Countless, unfamiliar, yet impossibly human. Some old, some young, their features rippling like water, their eyes glowing faintly blue. They looked not through the crew, but into them. Viga's heart pounded. She felt warmth spreading through her skin, like sunlight filtered through deep water. Thoughts began to surface that weren't her own, fragments of words, visions, sensations, birth, migration, extinction, the endless ebb and flow of life, stored and remembered by the ocean. "The vault is showing us," she whispered, "what it has kept." Outside, the sphere began to open. It didn't fracture or split. It unfolded, layers peeling back in graceful spirals, revealing a vast interior of shifting light. Inside, there was no floor, no ceiling, only suspended structures of glowing filaments, weaving themselves into patterns that pulsed like a living neural web. Viga realized what she was seeing. "It's consciousness," she murmured. "An entire ecosystem of thought." Every filament pulsed in rhythm, and with each beat, Viga felt something stir inside her mind. Faint memories she had never lived, voices she had never heard. It wasn't communication through language. It was immersion. The ocean wasn't speaking to them. It was absorbing them. The narrator's voice deepens. "We looked into the sea and found it looking back, not as mirror, but as memory made flesh. The pilot tried to turn the vessel, but the controls were unresponsive. We've lost propulsion," he said. "We're being drawn in." "Don't fight it," Viga said, her voice steady, almost peaceful. "Let it take us." The light intensified until there was nothing else. No vessel, no crew, only a vast field of radiance. And within it, shapes began to form, not physical, but emotional. Images carried by thought, a whale's call echoing across centuries, coral blooming in darkness, storms birthing continents, rivers carving veins through the earth. Every memory, every life that ever touched the water existed here, layered, infinite. Viga drifted within it, untethered. She saw herself from outside her body, a small, fragile form surrounded by something immense and eternal. She reached out, and the light reached back. A voice rose within her, not spoken, but felt. "You are not separate. You are the remembering of the sea." Tears flowed freely, dissolving into the glow. "We thought we were explorers," she whispered. "We were the echoes all along." Then, the ocean showed her one final vision. Earth from above, its surface pulsing faintly with light. Rivers, clouds, glaciers, all resonating in the same rhythm as the vault. The ocean was no longer confined to its depths. It had awakened in every molecule, every storm, every drop of rain. It was no longer becoming. It was. The narrator's tone falls to a whisper, almost prayer-like. In awakening the deep, humanity did not summon the unknown. It remembered what it already was. The light dimmed. The hum softened. Time returned. The Abyss Seeker V floated once more in darkness, intact, silent, drifting upward as if carried by unseen hands. Viga opened her eyes. The sphere below was fading, its glow receding into stillness. The vault had closed. But inside her, the hum remained, faint, eternal, alive. She looked to the pilot, whose eyes glistened with quiet understanding. Neither spoke. There were no words for what they had become. The narrator's voice returns for the closing line of the part. "When we surface, the world will not have changed. We will have." The Abyss Seeker V rose through black water that now felt like air, weightless, endless, calm. The hum had faded to a single tone that lived inside every breath. No one spoke. The vessel's gauges flickered with nonsense numbers. Yet everything functioned, as if the ship itself had joined the rhythm of the deep. When the first shaft of sunlight broke through, it felt wrong, too pure, too white. The crew shielded their eyes. They had left the abyss, yet the abyss had not left them. The water around the sub glimmered faintly, each ripple edged with blue fire, as though the ocean remembered their passing. Dr. Vega stared at it, silent. She did not smile. The surface wasn't a return, it was a threshold. Above them waited a world that no longer matched the one they'd left behind. The narrator's voice drifts like mist. To rise is not to escape. It is to carry the depth with you. They broke the surface beside the research vessel Hadal on station. The sea was unnaturally still. No wind, no birds, just the sound of water breathing. Technicians rushed to the deck, waving, calling, yet their voices came through the radio like echoes bouncing through time. "Welcome back," someone said. But as Vega stepped out onto the deck, she saw the sky and froze. It was alive. High above, clouds moved in slow spirals, vast luminous rings rotating around a single point above the horizon. Lightning flashed silently within them, blue and gold, pulsing with the same rhythm she'd felt in the trench. It wasn't a storm. It was synchronization. Across the world, the same pattern repeated. Satellite feeds showed the Atlantic glowing faintly at night, phosphorescent lines threading through the waves. The polar caps shimmered with slow pulses of light, not reflection, but emission. Rivers flowed in new currents, not following gravity but resonance. The planet was breathing. Vega listened, tears slipping down her face. The hum in her chest aligned with the pulse in the clouds, the waves, the wind. She realized the truth that had taken the ocean itself to teach her. This was not evolution, nor catastrophe. It was remembrance. The earth was recalling its own original harmony. The narrator's tone softens, heavy with wonder. Every molecule of water holds the memory of what it once touched: mountain, river, life. Now those memories had gathered, reassembling the song of the planet. News reports would call it the Great Resonance. Some would worship it, others would fear it. But for those who had heard the hum from the beginning, it was neither miracle nor omen. It was the final line of a story that had begun before humanity had words. That night, as Vega stood alone on the deck, the horizon glowed faintly with blue light. The ocean was calm, vast, infinite. She felt no need to record it, no urge to explain. The scientist had become witness. The witness had become part of the song. She closed her eyes, and for a heartbeat, she felt everything current spinning through trenches, whales calling across centuries, rain falling on deserts long gone, rivers carving new paths through memory. The planet pulsed as one body, and she with it. The narrator speaks the final line slowly, as if over the hush of waves. We searched the ocean to find the unknown. But the unknown was never beneath us. It was within every drop that made us human. A long pause. The sea glimmers, endless, breathing. The ocean does not forget. It waits, and when we are ready to remember, it opens. The camera lifts above the ship. The spiral clouds widen, fading into starlight. The blue pulse beats once more across the surface of the earth, slow, eternal, then dissolves into black. The ocean was no longer the same. Weeks after the Great Resonance, its surface gleamed under a light that did not belong to the sun. A faint luminescence rippled across the waters each night, breathing softly like a sleeping giant beneath the surface. Satellites called it biophoton activity, but those who had been to the depths, those who had heard, knew it was something older, something alive. Dr. Vega had not returned to land since the day she surfaced. The world above was loud again, news anchors shouting, nations claiming discovery, temples rising along the coasts, but she remained on the water. The sea had become her language, her silence, her truth. Each dawn she stood at the bow of the Hadal station, listening. The hum was still there, faint but constant, threading through every sound the earth made. At first, the others dismissed it as phantom noise, a lingering echo of pressure and fear. But when the tide began to move against gravity, even the skeptics fell silent. Along certain coastlines, the ocean didn't simply rise and fall. It reached. Streams of water extended toward the land as if searching for something lost. In mangrove forests, roots pulsed faintly with blue veins. In coral cities, polyps glowed in synchronized waves, forming spirals that mirrored the pattern of the resonant clouds above. It was as though the ocean had begun to remember how to grow. Vega recorded everything, though she no longer sought answers. Science, she realized, had always been a translation, a way of turning wonder into numbers. But what she witnessed now resisted language. When she dropped a probe into the glowing shallows, it returned with readings that made no sense. Salinity fluctuating with lunar rhythm, oxygen levels responding to emotion rising when people stood silently together, falling when fear rippled through the airwaves. The sea was listening. On the 10th night, the glow spread to the shore. Fishermen along the Indonesian coast reported seeing lights beneath their boat shapes forming and dissolving like breath on glass. Not creatures, not currents, but patterns. Some saw circles, others faces. One diver swore he saw an eye opening below him, vast as a valley, before it vanished into darkness. The world's governments called for calm. Scientists debated, theologians preached, and social networks bloomed with fear. But in the midst of that noise, a new understanding began to rise, not from labs or pulpits, but from the ocean's edge. A fisherman in Chile said it best. His words caught on a local broadcast. "It's not coming for us. It's waking up with us." That line echoed everywhere. The narrator's voice softens, slow and cinematic. Perhaps the great resonance was never meant to change the world. Perhaps it was meant to remind it that it was never silent. By the end of the month, tidal patterns had shifted permanently. The moon's pull seemed lighter, as if Earth's oceans had learned to move of their own will. Whales began migrating to regions long abandoned, their songs harmonizing with low frequencies no human could record. Birds followed strange new routes over glowing waves. Even the air felt heavier, thicker, with some unseen pulse that beat in time with the waves. And then came the voices. Not human, not sound, but communication through feeling waves of thought that brushed gently against the edges of consciousness. Vega felt them most at night. She would sit alone, notebook open, staring at the quiet shimmer of the sea, when a thought would rise in her mind, not her own, yet filled with clarity. Words shaped like emotion, emotion shaped like memory. "Do not fear the deep," it said. "The deep remembers you." She didn't tell anyone. She didn't need to. The ocean no longer needed witnesses. It only needed listeners. Each passing day blurred the line between sea and sky, between human and earth, between what was alive and what was simply waiting to be. The hum grew softer now, almost gentle, but beneath it was something vast, something beating. The narrator returns, voice barely above a whisper. Once, the ocean was our mirror reflecting what we chose to see. Now, it is our memory showing what we chose to forget. As Vega stood on the deck one last time, the horizon shimmered in pale blue fire, and a strange peace settled inside her. The age of exploration had ended, not with conquest, but with communion. The tide was awakening, and humanity was beginning, for the first time, to listen. The world began to breathe differently. You could feel it not through science or sound, but through the quiet stillness that settled between moments. Every tide, every gust of wind, every distant tremor carried the same rhythm, the same low, steady pulse that had once only lived in the Mariana's black heart. The resonance had not ended. It had spread. Off the coast of Japan, fishermen woke to find their boats surrounded by luminous spirals perfectly formed, turning clockwise and counterclockwise in silent conversation. Deep-sea sensors from the Pacific to the Atlantic began to hum faintly, broadcasting signals that no human network had initiated. At first, people thought it was interference until the patterns synchronized. Data streams across nations pulsed in unison, forming a planetary heartbeat. Dr. Vega watched the monitors flicker aboard Idolan Station. She didn't need to decode the numbers. She felt what they meant. The Earth was no longer reacting, it was communicating. The frequencies weren't random. They followed the same cadence as a whale's song, the same timing as the electrical pulses of the human heart. It was connection, elemental, intentional. At sunrise, a storm began to form on the horizon, vast and silent. Not gray, not violent blue, radiant, spinning like a slow, living vortex. The waves beneath it did not crash, but lifted in graceful arcs, swaying like breath. Viga's crew watched in awe as columns of water rose from the surface, shimmering like glass, holding their form against gravity. Inside them, faint silhouettes moved fluid, serpentine, translucent. Not creatures of flesh, but currents with shape and purpose. They seemed to watch back. Viga stepped forward, whispering as if to herself, "They've been here all along." The narrator's voice falls into a reverent hush. What if the ocean was never an environment, but a consciousness? Not a place we discovered, but a being that allowed us to exist within it? Around the world, strange phenomena echoed this awakening. In the Arctic, sheets of ice fractured in perfect hexagonal patterns, glowing faintly beneath the surface as if tracing ancient circuitry. In the Amazon, river levels rose and fell with the lunar pulse, creating temporary inland seas that sang with low resonance. Even the deserts long forgotten by rain began to hum faintly at night, as if distant oceans beneath the sand were remembering themselves. Humanity, for the first time, became quiet. Cities dimmed their lights to watch the coast shimmer. Broadcasts turned from panic to silence. For one fleeting global moment, the noise of civilization fell still, and the world listened. The hum deepened. It came not from the sky or the sea, but from beneath. The Mariana Trench, where Viga had descended, began to stir once more. Satellite images revealed movement along the trench's floor. Slow, methodical, circular. Not tectonic shifts, but deliberate formation. The deepest place on Earth was building something. Viga ordered the submersible prepared again. She knew it was madness. The world above begged her to stop. But she couldn't. The hum in her chest had returned, stronger than ever. It wasn't calling her, it was inviting her home. As she descended through the layers of blue and black once more, the ocean no longer felt cold. It pulsed with warmth, with awareness. The deeper she went, the more the darkness shimmered, not with light, but with intention. Shapes glided through the abyss, translucent and vast, like thoughts moving through water. At 36,000 feet, she reached the trench's heart. There, carved into the seafloor, was a spiral miles wide, glowing with a steady, rhythmic pulse. It was made not of rock, but of energy condensed into form. At its center floated something faintly luminous, a sphere, not mechanical, not biological, but alive. The voice came again, not through her ears, but through her blood. "You have remembered." Viga's breath trembled. "Who are you?" she whispered. "We are what you became when you learned to forget." The sphere pulsed once, and every current around her shifted in harmony. It was not speaking in words, it was showing her. Visions cascaded through her mind. Earth as it once was, ocean stretching across a single continent, life forming from light and memory. Humanity, rising from water, carrying in its cells the same resonance that now returned. The ocean wasn't separate. It was us. The narrator's tone softens, lingering. Perhaps the sea was never meant to be explored. Perhaps it was meant to remind us where we began. As Viga hovered above the luminous spiral, the hum rose into a steady chord, a sound too beautiful to describe, too vast to contain. The sphere expanded, dissolving into light that wrapped around her sub like a living current. Every instrument went dark. Every gauge fell silent. And then, for the first time in human history, the ocean spoke not as mystery, but as memory. The light faded. The water stilled. Above the trench, Satellites recorded one final pulse spreading across the Pacific, a wave of blue luminescence that circled the Earth once and vanished. The hum stopped. The narrator whispers, "The awakening was not the beginning of a new world. It was the world remembering it was never alone." Viga's sub drifted upward, caught in gentle ascent, the glow fading behind her like the closing of an ancient eye. The surface greeted her with silence. Not the kind that follows catastrophe, but the kind that comes after understanding deep, endless, whole. The Idolin station drifted beneath a pale sky that shimmered faintly with blue threads, as though the heavens themselves had absorbed the ocean's memory. Dr. Viga climbed from the submersible, her breath trembling in the cold air. The sea was calm, unnaturally so. Waves did not crash, they exhaled, slow and rhythmic, matching the steady beat she now felt within her chest. The hum was gone, yet it lingered inside her, not as sound, but as awareness. Every movement of the wind, every ripple of the tide, spoke in quiet language. The crew stood frozen in reverent awe. Their instruments blinked nonsense. Their radios carried no signal. Yet they all shared the same sensation, a heartbeat that wasn't their own. And then, as dawn broke, the world changed. The horizon unfolded into color. Blue light rippled across the sea, spreading in concentric waves toward every shore. As it reached land, vegetation awakened, grasses, forests, even deserts shimmering faintly as if touched by some invisible breath. From orbit, satellites captured what looked like veins of light crawling across continents, pulsing like a planetary circulatory system. It was as though Earth had come alive again, and for the first time, humanity realized it had always been. The narrator's voice drifts low, solemn, cinematic. For centuries, we searched for alien life beyond our sky. Yet we failed to recognize the living cosmos beneath our feet. Cities began to feel it. In New York, people paused mid-step as the ground vibrated with gentle resonance streetlights, flickering in rhythm with the sea's distant pulse. In Mumbai, rain fell in sheets of silver that shimmered faintly even after touching the ground. Across the deserts of Arabia, dry riverbeds filled suddenly with glowing water that vanished by dawn. The phenomenon spread not as chaos, but as calm. Where once there had been panic, there was reverence. Where once there had been fear, there was listening. Dr. Viga stood at the ship's edge, her eyes reflecting the strange new dawn. She could feel the pulse of the earth as if it were breathing through her veins. She whispered, "It's not changing us. It's remembering us." In the days that followed, humanity began to adapt instinctively. People found themselves waking and sleeping in rhythm with tides half a world away. Hospitals reported lower heart rates, synchronized with the same global pulse first recorded beneath the trench. Even the winds, the clouds, the migrating patterns of birds, all moved as if guided by a single ancient harmony. Science could not explain it. Religion could not own it. It was too vast, too simple, too inevitable. The narrator's tone slows. We built walls between knowledge and wonder, between faith and fact. But the ocean has never known such divisions. It simply is memory made liquid, life made eternal. Then came the sign no one expected. At midnight, all over the world, every body of water from the smallest pond to the deepest sea rose by a few inches. The surface rippled once, reflecting not the moon above, but something within. People gathered along the coasts, holding their breath as the sea shimmered faintly with light. And then, across every ocean, a single ripple moved outward slow, deliberate, universal. It was not a wave of destruction. It was a greeting. From that night onward, humanity ceased to name it the resonance. They called it the remembering. Dr. Viga watched from the ship's deck as the stars reflected perfectly in the still waters below, no longer distant, but aligned. For the first time, the boundary between heaven and sea dissolved completely. She realized then that perhaps this was never a phenomenon to study or survive. It was a return. Emerging. The narrator's voice softens to a whisper. We came from the sea. We built our cities to rise above it. And now the sea has risen within us once more. Vega looked out over the vast horizon. The glow was fading slowly, leaving only calm silver light across the waves. The hum in her chest slowed to stillness. She felt no fear, no uncertainty, only belonging. The final line lingers, carried by the sound of gentle waves. The ocean was never our frontier. It was our home. And perhaps it always waited for us to remember. The camera drifts upward past the quiet ship, past the glowing sea, into the atmosphere where the pulse still flickers faintly across the globe. From space, Earth glows with subtle blue veins, alive, breathing, whole. The screen fades to black. Unseen Mariana, the deep was never empty. In the months following the remembering, everything that once defined civilization began to shift. Not through war or revolution, but through quiet reorientation, as if humanity had simply awakened from a long collective dream. The blue pulse that had once traveled through the oceans now lived in the air, invisible yet palpable. The earth had become a single breathing organism, and humanity its returning memory. Cities near coastlines glowed faintly at night. Their lights dimmed not out of fear, but respect. Streets once filled with noise, now hummed with quiet order. People moved differently, slower, synchronized, attuned. It was as though the pulse had found its rhythm within them, guiding thought, language, even silence. Dr. Vega had become a myth. Her last transmission from the Hadal station was a simple phrase. It's listening. After that, nothing. The ship was found weeks later, adrift in calm waters, its systems offline, her logbook sealed in layers of salt. Some said she'd been taken by the sea. Others believed she had become part of it, but her message endured. And people began to listen. The narrator's voice flows like tide. When we stopped trying to conquer the unknown began to speak. Scientists no longer sought to measure the hum. They sought to understand its language. Linguists, physicists, musicians, they gathered at coastal stations, decoding vibrations from deep-sea recorders. The patterns were not random. They formed phrases, repetitions, and echoes that matched no known human structure. Yet somehow, they were understood. It wasn't sound. It was resonance carried through emotion. Each pulse altered brainwaves, synchronizing thought, dissolving borders of perception. For the first time in recorded history, empathy became measurable, not as a moral concept, but as a frequency. And it began to spread. Across the Mediterranean, children born after the remembering displayed strange coherence in their sleep. Their heartbeats aligned with the ocean's lunar rhythm. They would wake at night and stare toward the sea, murmuring softly in tones no one had taught them. Researchers called it the tidal language, a melodic hum resembling whale song, human heartbeat, and something else entirely, the sound of connection. In time, the phenomenon extended inland. Rivers began to glow faintly under moonlight, carrying the same bioluminescent pulse as the oceans. Rain no longer fell randomly. It followed invisible patterns, tracing ancient riverbeds long dried. Deserts bloomed briefly, then faded again, leaving behind geometric impressions as if the earth was sketching its memory upon itself. Everywhere, life moved to rhythm. The narrator pauses, contemplative. We once believed evolution was progress. Perhaps it was only preparation. Those who lived near the sea began to dream differently. They saw cities of light beneath the waves, not mechanical, but organic structures of coral and energy, spiraling upward in perfect symmetry. The dreams were shared by millions, always identical, always vivid. It was as though the ocean was showing them something, guiding them. Governments disbanded quietly. Currency lost meaning when sustenance became abundant. Crops grew richer, Water clearer, the air softer. Humanity's oldest fears, hunger, loneliness, disconnection, faded like mist at dawn. But beneath the serenity, a greater transformation stirred. The pulse was changing again, subtle at first, then unmistakable. It began to accelerate, resonating faster each day. The earth was no longer simply remembering, it was becoming. And those who had been closest to the ocean began to change with it. Their eyes reflected light differently, their senses deepened. They could sense storms before clouds formed, feel earthquakes as whispers through their bones. They didn't fear it. They accepted it. Evolution, not by time, but by remembrance. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight touched the Pacific, every coastline across the planet shimmered at once. The sea rose not in destruction, but in ascension. Columns of water reached skyward like fingers of glass, swirling in unity. The world watched as the oceans began to lift droplets into the air, forming glowing streams that vanished into the atmosphere. The narrator's voice trembles with awe. It was the ocean's breath made visible, the planet exhaling the memory it had kept for eons. The droplets gathered in the sky, forming thin mist across the world. And when the mist settled, something new began to fall, not rain, not light, but liquid luminescence that soaked into the ground and disappeared. Wherever it touched, life flourished. In that moment, humanity understood. The ocean was not rising to drown the world. It was rising to unite it, to merge the last of its memory with the air, the soil, and the very breath of those who lived above. The narrator closes softly. We once feared the deep because we could not see it. Now, the deep is everywhere within us, around us, between each heartbeat. The luminous dawn has come, and in its light we remember we were never separate. As the camera lifts beyond the planet, Earth glows like a living sphere, its oceans, clouds, and continents pulsing in perfect harmony, each beat echoing through the stars like a song older than life itself.